What's up, guys? So we finally got some information on the Affliction talents coming with the War Within, the hero talent specifically, the one that we share with Destruction, Hellcaller. So we're going to take a look at that real quick. I'll give a little bit of my feedback on what I think about it. I will say I am pretty interested in some of the things that they were talking about. I'm very optimistic, but some of the things are definitely interesting for Affliction. As far as Destruction goes, I'm not going to give too much feedback on that. I will talk about it a little bit, but I mainly play Affliction. I think most people here know that I mainly enjoy Affliction, so I'm going to try and mainly focus on that, and then maybe talk a little bit about the Destruction stuff. Also, before I jump into it, if you're interested in supporting me, be sure to come by the Twitch, all that good stuff, twitch.tv/arson. I do have a Patreon if you want to support me in other ways. Either way, thanks so much for all the support. Let's jump into it, guys. All right, so jumping right into it. Obviously, they're called Hellcaller, and it's the one we share with Destruction. So you can see Affliction, Destruction, and the other one that we'll be getting is Soul Harvester. This is the one that has me the most interested. I know I've heard other content creators say a similar thing, but that's the one, after what we've seen so far for these talents, this is the one that has me the most interested on being a little bit maybe more into the Affliction thing. There is plenty of stuff Affliction about this current tree. I'm just more hopeful that that one maybe has some things that lean in things that we need, which is like shard generation and stuff like that. Or maybe just a little bit of different stuff. But jumping right into the ones we do have, the big thing is Wither. So Wither's replacing Corruption for Affliction, and then replacing Immolate for Destruction. You know, it's got some RP stuff going on here, which does sound cool. Bestows a vile malediction upon the target, burning the sinew and muscle of its host, dealing shadow from damage over 18 seconds. So the 18-second thing is the big indicator, because there's a talent down here at the bottom that'll interact with that timing, but we'll talk about that when we get down to it. So the big part, Corruption now is Wither, right? And they've already said that Seed of Corruption and like Cataclysm or Cataclysm, you know, for Destruction, will apply Wither. So anything that would have applied Corruption will apply, or it would have applied Immolate, you know, vice versa, will apply Corruption and will apply Wither instead of Corruption, sorry. So going over here, Zalin's Ferocity. I don't know, I'm going to butcher some of these names, I guarantee it. Shadow damage increased by 5%, fire damage increased by 5%, you know, standard stuff. Same on this side, it's a similar situation, right? Fire critical strike damage increased by 10, shadow critical strike damage increased by 10. These are just fillers. It's all good. I mean, we'll take it, right? We're all good with that. And then Blackened Soul, right? So this is another big component with Wither. So your damaging abilities further corrupt enemies affected by your Wither, increasing its stack count by 1. So Wither has stacks. Each time Wither increases, it has a chance to become a cute Wither, dealing Shadow Flight damage to its host every 1 second until 1 stack remains. So once it gets to what I'm assuming is 8 stacks, right? Because it says Wither will always become acute after reaching 8 stacks. So we don't know if it has more than 8, but I'm going to assume that it has 8. It'll start like ticking down every second from, that's at least what I'm gathering from this, right? And I do have an interesting, like, I was looking at some of these other talents. I guess I can go over it after, but I'm curious how this will interact with certain things. So this is a pretty big part of it, right? So not only are you kind of managing the stack count, but once it hits a certain stack, it's going to start doing a lot more damage on its way down. So then that'll feed into, you know, this row down here. We already talked about these side ones. This one's really interesting. Curse Weakness also applies Curse of Tongues. This is pretty cool, except I think because this exists, I don't know if we'd ever play this. Maybe in some situations, but odds are you're not going to need Weakness and Tongues on the same mob. What's more interesting is enemies within 10 yards are affected by your Curse Weakness and Curse of Tongues at 75% effectiveness. How this might work with Amp Curse, I'm not sure. I know I've seen some confusing, like some people are confused about this. I'm reading it and assuming that it means 10 yards within the target that is affected by your curse. Some people think it might mean 10 yards within you and you have to be in melee. To me, this seems much more 10 yards of the target that's cursed. But, I mean, we'll see. I don't know. That's just what I assume it means because that just kind of makes sense to me, but I don't know. Wither deals 100% increased damage, but its duration is 50% shorter. This is the one that I was referring to. So it's 18 seconds. That would make it a 9 seconds. That's a pretty short dot. However, I do think it's interesting when we look at the next one that's down below it after this talent. So Wither damage increased by, this is a choice node, obviously, right? These are all choice nodes. Wither damage increased by 15%. When a Wither gains a stack from Blackened Soul, it has a chance to gain 1 additional stack. This is probably what you'll play most of the time, just because managing a 9-second dot, even though it's 100% increased damage, seems probably to be a little weird. However, when we go into this Cold a Week, which I will go back to the other ones, casting Wither directly or refreshing Wither, so like with Seed, right? with less than 4 seconds remaining causes Wither to gain 3 stacks. I'm curious if there'll be an interesting interaction between this having a shorter duration, right? Because you want it to be 4 seconds or less when you refresh it. And then it would gain 3 stacks with seed, right? So like you seed, you do your normal rotation, and then once it ticks down, you know, like 5 seconds or whatever, you cast your other seed. Does it immediately gain 3 stacks again while still doing what you mean? I feel like there could be a very interesting interaction with this. It sounds like it might be a complete pain in single target when you're not managing seed, but I do wonder how that interaction might feel if timed correctly. It might be a little too much, but something that I was thinking about. The other choice note over on the same row, sorry, I skipped down a little bit. When you consume Hellstone, you also restore 10% of your max health as Soul Leech. Kind of interesting. And then the other option is sacrifice 10% of your max health. I'm assuming this is just passively all the time. You're just giving up 10% max health. And then Soul Leech now absorbs an additional 15% of your max health. I like the idea of this one, although I've heard there's some issues with Soul Leech just in general, so I don't know if that's a bug or like it's not always full or it's not always maxed out. So, but I think the idea of having an absorb more frequently than having just max health Soul Leech when you use your Hellstone. But I mean, either one of these is probably pretty interesting. I guess we'll find out when we get to actually play with it. Going down from that, Blackened Soul deals 5% increased damage per stack of Wither, and then Agony deals damage 10% faster. Again, I'm not going to focus too much on the destruction stuff. It is interesting, but I don't play as much destruction right now. I do still enjoy destruction, but I don't want to give too much like feedback or talk too much about a spec that I'm not super familiar with. But the Agony deals 10% faster, damage 10% faster is interesting because before we had Creeping Death, right? So Creeping Death made all of our dots, it makes all of our dots tick faster. We still have it. But before, what it did is it made your dots actually a shorter duration. And then they fixed it to where your dots did the same amount of damage just faster. The duration was the same, but the dots ticked faster, right? If that's what this does, this potentially could mean better shard generation if it's actually increasing the tick rate of Agony, right? Which would make Agony tick more frequently, which in turn could make us generate more shards. I'm still working on a wishlist video for what I hope we see coming down the line with War Within. One of the biggest things for me is shard generation. I feel like Affliction shard generation, especially in single target, is extremely volatile and feels almost insanely bad when you have no shards, but feels great when you have a bunch of shards. That feast or famine gameplay is very awkward right now. I think that gap needs to be a little bit shorter. Even in AoE, you'll still find yourself with no shards, right? Moving back over to the other side, we'll work our way down to this thing. Marcus Avius, Agony damage increased by 10%. Great. Agony is now a combo skill. Directly recasting Agony within 2 seconds applies Agony to another nearby target. I don't fully understand what this means by combo skill. I'm assuming it means like you hit it, and then if you hit it again, because that's what it says, then it does something. I'm guessing that's what they mean by combo skill. I don't exactly know how this will work with us, because ideally it could potentially help with the whole Vial Taint gap that we have right now, or if you don't know, Vial Taint's the cooldown for Vial Taint is not equal to the duration of Agony, which means you have to catch a bunch of Agonies in between the cast time of your next Vial Taint, which feels terrible, and it's one of the biggest complaints a lot of people have right now. I don't know if this necessarily fixes it, because recasting Agony within 2 seconds, I guess we'll have to see how it feels when you play with it, but it sounds like you might only be able to get like 1 or 2 of these in that window, which doesn't really help that situation. As far as the destruction version of this, I'm sure it's probably fine, because it's now, they've also said, like, because this corruption was instant cast for us, Immolate's instant cast, well, Immolate's not instant cast for destruction, but Wither will be instant cast for them. So similar kind of situation, I'm guessing. I do think it's interesting that they're reapplying Wither, and we're applying Agony. I do think it's kind of interesting. But then the big thing that this all culminates into, which I actually think is pretty interesting, is Malevolence. Dark magic erupts from you and corrupts your soul for 20 seconds. Pretty cool, 1 minute cooldown. Causing enemies to suffer from your Wither to take Shadow Flame damage and increase its stat count by 3. Okay, cool. So it kind of just like inflames all of our Withers that we have out. And then while corrupted, your active Withers are all acute, which means that they're all starting to tick down, right? So each time it has a chance to become acute, dealing Shadow Flame to its host every 1 second until it starts ticking down to 1 stack. And then, sorry, go back to it. Your haste increased by 10%. Great. Kind of reminds me of Dark Soul Misery a little bit, like old Dark Soul Misery that like made all of our dots tick faster, if I remember correctly. So this is kind of similar to that, where all of our stuff's like, we just kind of like ignite all of our Withers and then we just get 10% haste. And then Rapture grants 1 additional stack of Wither to targets affected by UA. I think this is mainly only going to be applicable in probably single target, because I don't know how frequently you're going to be wanting to cast Rapture in an AoE situation. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll switch to just only casting Rapture when we have Malevolence out. So we're trying to generate that extra stack on like our Primo target, because we're not going to have, I know it says targets affected by UA, which a lot of people assume like, oh, maybe we'll get to cast more UAs out on multiple targets. I think it more has to do with that PvP talent, where you can cast multiple UAs, but maybe, I don't know. Well, there's still so much we don't know about Affliction going into this expansion. Hey, maybe we can cast more UAs out there. I feel like that would be an interesting situation to find ourselves in, but I wouldn't complain. Either way, I do think this whole talent, the way it all kind of synergizes, is very interesting to me. I really want to see how it feels, so obviously I'll be making another video on that when we actually can play it. Be sure to subscribe, all that good stuff, or come by the Twitch where I'll be doing it live, twitch.tv/Arsenal, all that good stuff. But overall, I actually think the Wither thing is an interesting concept. It does feel like this tree definitely has a lot more Affliction flavor than Destro flavor, even though it's like Shadow Flame damage, all that kind of stuff. The whole managing another dot thing, or at least kind of being aware of another dot, definitely doesn't seem as Destro as, you know, as it does as Affliction, which does still have me really interested in how Soul Harvest is going to be after we've already seen Diabolist or whatever for the Demo and Destruction one, which, if you're a Destruction fan right now, I feel like you might be feeling a little confused, because this one feels very Demo and this one feels more Affliction than it does Destro, so I guess we'll see how that is. But as an Affliction enjoyer, I'm actually pretty interested in playing with this, at least until we know what Soul Harvester holds for us, right? We can only go off of what we have right now. My biggest takeaways, though, I'll say, I think it's really interesting that we're getting another dot to manage, that it might make Corruption feel a little bit more interesting. Aura of Enfeeblement seems significantly like a big quality of life change in especially Mythic Plus. If it is off of the target that your Hazard Curse on, that might increase some things that are fantastic for us, because Vile Taint, you know, overwrites all your curses, which means you can't really get a curse set up in most pulls. So I guess we'll see how that plays. Having a 1 minute cooldown, especially after we'll be shifting away, as far as we know, from our current tier set, which makes us kind of like have a 30-second-ish cooldown with Soul Rot and Vile Taint. Having a 1 minute cooldown that, you know, might actually result in a lot of damage with the 10% haste applied to it might actually be really fun for Affliction. So I'm very curious on how that feels. Again, tons of questions about the agony damage tills faster, the whole combo thing. I think part of these are, they need to clarify some information on what does this exactly mean, the damage ticking faster. Does that affect soul? Does that affect our soul shard generation? You know, does this apply to the whatever? And then again, I really do think that there could be a very interesting interaction with this 100% increased damage but shorter duration and this Cold a Week. As far as like Seed of Corruption goes, you know, if you time your seeds correctly, could you get more stacks but stay, you know, make it more acute more frequently? I don't know. We'll have to see. Either way, I just wanted to quickly go over what I think about the tree. I know people have been asking me in the Twitch chat and all that kind of stuff, so I want to quickly go over what I thought about it. I did talk about it on stream a little bit, but this is definitely a little bit more in-depth. I will be following up with a full video of like wish lists and things like that. I'm still working on that. So if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe, all the good stuff. Come by the Twitch, twitch.tv/Arson. If you want to get early access to the YouTube videos or support me in other ways, you can check out the Patreon, all that good stuff. But other than that, if you want to see some live Affliction keys, we're still pushing some stuff this week. Or if you want to just hang out, cool, chill places, hang out, come by the stream. I'll see you guys over there. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all the support. I appreciate you. See you guys in the next one.